Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Daniela, and on this channel we do cocktails with our crafts all in one segment, and that's why it's called Crafting with a Cocktail. Today I've got two versions of the same cocktail, so we can do a little bit of a taste test. So let's check out what today's cocktail is, and then we'll jump right into our DIYs. Cheers! For this recipe you'll need Moscato, fresh ginger, tea of your choice, sugar, and some water to boil. This is a ginger Moscato iced tea recipe that I found online that one of my best friends sent me, so I will leave the link for it down below. Now, I didn't really specify what type of tea to use, just said your favorite iced tea, so I am trying out one with green tea and one with Tazo passion tea. I've also got a third mug here that I'm going to make some simple syrup with. I'm just going to make it the super easy route, so I'm doing 1 part sugar to 1 part boiling water. Instead of doing it on a pan, I'm just going to warm it up with my kettle. Now I'm just peeling my ginger here with a spoon. It's relatively easy, it's just kind of difficult the angle I'm at, and of course it's making a mess, so I realized I should grab a plate. Once that's peeled, I cut up some chunks, and we'll be adding those to my simple syrup when it's ready. Once my water kettle is boiling, I'm going to add it to my 2 mugs with my different types of tea in them, as well as, again, that 1 part sugar that I have there. I didn't make as big an amount of simple syrup as the recipe said because I wasn't making a whole pitcher's worth. I was just going to make enough for a taste test for each one. So I think I just did a 1/2 cup water, 1/2 cup sugar here, and I'm just going to stir and stir and stir until it's completely dissolved. Once it's completely dissolved, I can add my ginger in there and allow that to infuse for as long as possible. Now, I will say the only, I guess, negative side of doing it this quick way is I think that with the ginger in a hot pan would have really infused a little bit better than the way I did it here, because it's going to cool off much faster in a mug. Make sure you read the instructions on the tea that you are using to see how long they need to steep for. Mine were both around the 3-minute mark, so I was able to remove the tea bags at the same time, just using a spoon and wrapping my tea bag and the little string around it to squeeze out any extra juices that may be in there. Then it's time to cool off the teas. Simple syrup can stay aside, but the 2 teas should go in the fridge to cool off. We don't want them to melt the ice for our iced tea. In the meantime, I'm removing my chunks of ginger after letting them soak in the simple syrup for about an hour or so. Like I said, I think I would leave it hotter in the pan. I think that would help to infuse it, but either way, that fresh ginger really makes a difference. I did put a little bit of the ginger that was soaking into each one of my glasses for the taste test. I just wanted that extra bit of zest in there, and I've pulled out my iced teas once they're completely ready, as well as my chilled Moscato. Now, you can use a Moscato of your choice. It doesn't really matter here. I am then putting some ice into my glasses before pouring in the rest of the ingredients. So I'm going to fill them up with Moscato. Now, this is also, the recipe I used wasn't very specific, so I'm just kind of doing what I think would taste good. So I've got a little bit of simple syrup, a whole bunch of tea, green tea in my first one with a splash of Moscato, and the second one I decided to go a little sweeter. So I did about halfway up with my tea, and then again a splash of simple syrup and a bunch of Moscato for this one. The ratio really depends on how sweet you want things. Moscato is really sweet, simple syrup is really sweet. I think you could even go with a slightly drier wine if you're going to use a simple syrup, but that's just my opinion. Okay, first up is the green tea ginger Moscato. I think also I didn't do even ratios, which is something I should have paid attention to when pouring. So this one has less Moscato than the other one. Ooh, but it's tasty. Funny enough, it tastes like pear juice to me. And then this is the Tazo passion tea. Ooh, that's refreshing. Really like that one. They're both really good though, I have to say. The recipe I used I'll leave down below, but it didn't specify what kind of iced tea to make. It just said your favorite freshly brewed iced tea or something like that. So I thought I'd pick 2 of my favorites, and to be honest, they both turned out good. So let me know if you try this recipe. Let's move on to our DIYs. Is it CottageCore round 1? So before I start crafting, I just want to welcome you to this video of, is this CottageCore? Because I don't really understand the CottageCore style, so I'm going to try some DIYs that might be CottageCore. I'm not really sure. And you can let me know down below if they are or not, if they're another style, farmhouse, modern, whatever. I don't know. I'm not really understanding what CottageCore is. I get that it's like florals and neutrals, but it feels really just like fall farmhousey to me. I'm not sure. So anyways, let's get crafting, and yeah, let me know if any of these are actually CottageCore or not. These tree DIYs or tree similar DIYs are super simple. They just are pretty time consuming, but I just bought 2 different foam cones that I got at, I believe, Joann's, but I think you can pick them up at any craft store. And I used 2 different methods to coat the the base, let's say. So for this one, I'm just using some cotton muslin, which is just a type of fabric, and I'm hot gluing it to my cone because I realized before I started that that green styrofoam would show through, and that would not be cute with our wooden flowers here. These are solo wood flowers, by the way, super gorgeous, high quality. I've used them in another DIY, and you'll see it again later, but absolutely love these flowers. So thank you so much, Solo Wood, for sending me these. If you want any to pick up yourself, I'll leave a link down below. Now, I do use a different method to coat my second cone, which I actually ended up preferring over this one, but that's okay. It's all a work in progress. Sometimes we just have an idea in mind and we haven't tested it out yet. So this one I'm just coating and hot gluing with a piece of fabric, like I said. If you choose to do it this way, the tighter the better, so that the flowers don't feel kind of loose and hanging when you glue them onto the structure itself. You're welcome for all my weird facial expressions throughout this DIY. It's really so humbling to see what I look like when I'm crafting. I'm just starting to glue on my flowers now. I'm using hot glue, and it really does take quite a bit to adhere them to it. I had to hold some of them for several seconds, like I would count to 10 and they still were falling a little bit. I think part of this, again, is that the fabric wasn't tight enough, but that's okay. Lesson learned. So I'm just going around and seeing what kind of looks good next to each other, trying to incorporate different colors and textures. This was a large variety pack from Solo Wood Flowers, and so I really was able to mix it up quite well. I did notice that some of the bottoms were really pointed or really protruding, so I cut some of those down, and later on you'll see I even cut some of the flowers in half just to fill in some of the gaps as well. But I won't put you through the pain of talking you through the whole process. You basically are just going to cover this entire thing with flowers to the best of your ability. Once I've got all the final touches on there, she is good to go. This is the full 360 view of how it looks. And then I'm going to clean up this hot mess with my favorite little ladybug vacuum. As you can see, it is really cleaning up this hot mess. Mind you, of course, there's a mess on the floor too, but we'll worry about that with a real vacuum. If you're interested in getting this sweet little ladybug, I'll leave a link in my description for you. Now, for the second flower, cone, tree, whatever you want to call it, I'm actually going to paint the base. So I'm starting with a darker green, and it actually ended up being not quite as dark as I'd hoped. So I do completely coat it with this green, and then to kind of dull out the color, I go in with a little bit of burgundy and just really kind of push it in there to dull it down a little bit, because I didn't want the green to really scream at you in between those flowers. I wanted it to be more of a background color. If you guys are wondering what I'm watching in the background, it's CSI. I used to watch it all the time with my dad as a kid, and now I just love watching it in the background. I'm pretty sure I've seen every episode. That's okay. Do any of you watch any stuff in the background that you've already seen a million times, so you don't really have to pay attention, but you still love it? Anyways, so basically the same process here. I'm just going around with my flowers. Now this is a multicolor pack from Solo Wood, and I had a couple left of the wooden ones, so I'm just putting all of those around. I couldn't tell which one would be more CottageCore, if it's the wooden plain white creamish brown ones, or maybe a little pop of color here and there. Yeah, not sure, but basically same process here, just going around scattering the colors where I can and really trying to balance it all out. I actually really love how this one turned out. This one was my favorite, and the lighter one was my boyfriend's favorite. Let me know which of the two you like best, or if either of them are actually CottageCore. CottageCore was described to me as like, gosh, Snow White's cabin. My friend Teresa B. DIY sent me that, and I was like, but wasn't her cabin all dusty and spiderwebs? I don't know. Like I said, I don't understand this style. That's why I'm reaching out, playing with some different styles, and seeing if you guys can confirm or deny if it is or not. Dun, 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 dun. We're reaching the end here. So I decided that I like these both together more than either one singularly. I think they have a really nice contrast in colors. You'll see the ultimate reveal photos in just a second here, but I think they really turned out quite nice. Let me know what you guys think. And again, is it CottageCore or is it not? Is it CottageCore round 2? Okay, look at this cute little scarecrow wreath. I actually really think this is cute. It's not my personal home decor style, but I do think it's really sweet and simple. And again, I have no idea what style it is. Cool. So these are all Dollar Tree products here. I've got a Dollar Tree wire wreath and scarecrow that you're supposed to stick in the ground or whatever. I had a really hard time detaching the wooden rod from it, so my boyfriend broke it off for me. We tried pulling it out and then realizing it was all the way up to his head, and so it might disassemble everything. So he just broke it off, which worked out just fine. Now I'm hot gluing some green burlap ribbon that's also from the Dollar Tree, and it was actually about the perfect amount. There's a small section you'll see in just a little bit that isn't covered by it, but that's perfectly okay because the scarecrow covers it. So I'm just going to wrap this around my wreath, and I glue it every time I do a turn. I was a little nervous that if I didn't do that, it might move or fall apart or unravel or something. So I really did put a little dot of glue each time that I did a turn. And this actually didn't take too horribly long. It's just really repetitive, and you really get the hang of it after 3 or 4 loops around your wire wreath. But yeah, that's all we're doing here until the next part. Once it's all good and wrapped up, I just hot glue the end to the other side. And as you can see, like I said, there's a little bit of a gap, but no big deal because our scarecrow friend will cover that up. So I'm just kind of playing with the arrangement of where I'd like to put him and where he will be sure to cover up those raw wire areas or whatever you want to call them. And I tried to really focus the hot glue on fabric touching fabric because hot glue doesn't like to stick to metal very much, so I made sure to really press on those areas so it would really adhere well to the wreath. I do go back and end up adding a little bit where the metal part is as well, and I'm using my little finger protector that is also from Dollar Tree. This one is a super cost-efficient DIY, and it turns out really, really cute. Now I'm grabbing some loose little fall leaves that I got at Dollar Tree last season. I'm not sure if they have them this season or not yet. I haven't seen them at mine, but my Dollar Trees are kind of slacking. So I'm just gluing those in an arranged order that I like. So I go from red to orange to yellow, and that's it for the front of our wreath. Super simple. I did debate adding like some twine or a bow or something, but I was happy with the simplicity of it. Now let's figure out how to hang it. I took off the little piece of jute from the top of the scarecrow. He came with this little tiny piece of twine or jute, and I decided to hang it almost like the wire on the back of a painting. So I'm tying a knot to each end and then placing it on the back of my wreath and hot gluing it down in place. This creates for kind of a seamless hanging. That way you can't see the twine when it's hanging on something. Of course, you could hang it just underneath the curved inner area of the wreath itself, but I liked the idea of not being able to see the nail or thumbtack or whatever you're using to hang it. So this is just a super simple technique. I glue it on there, and I actually did put a little bit of glue extra on top. And that's it for this one. Let me know, again, is it cottagecore or is it another style? I think maybe this is farmhouse. I don't really know. Just wanted to pop in real quick and say if you haven't liked, commented, and subscribed or shared with a friend or family, please, I invite you to do so to help YouTube recognize my channel. We are working hard on getting our monetization, and I just really want to engage with you all more as well. So definitely let me know down below what you think about these DIYs today. And I want to challenge us all to see if within 1 week we can get this video to 50 likes. So if we get it within 1 week of 50 likes, I will post an extra video that week. So make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, whatever you want to do, and we can move on to our next DIY. Is it CottageCore round 3? Okay, let me start by saying this project took multiple turns to get here, or at least maybe just one. I'm using the wooden dowel from the scarecrow that I used in another DIY, and I'm using this tiny little handsaw just to saw it off. This was not the greatest surface to hold it down on, so my partner is helping me by holding it while I saw it off. If I can find this online, I will leave it down listed below. It was a really easy to use tool, and I don't have the space or the monetary needs to get a giant saw, so this worked out well just for me. So again, we don't end up using this because this took a big fat turn. So I'm using a baby wipe and some antique wax to essentially stain our dowel. And the reason I'm keeping all this in is there's still a great idea here, a great concept, and some great techniques. So this is one of those where you get to stain wood so easily with just using a baby wipe and some antique wax by Waverly. And this might come to use in a future project, and maybe if someone else can figure out how to succeed in what I was trying to do, great. But if not, I actually ended up really liking my end result anyways. I'm coming in with some plaid paints. Plaid has apple barrel and folk art, and I'm a plaid ambassador, so I'm happy to be using their craft paints today. And I'm going to be creating a gradient. Now, a gradient is often now misconstrued as what's called an ombre, which is more used for like color, hair color, and stuff like this. In painting, it's called a gradient when a color goes from light to dark or one color to another color. So I am using white, a super light blue, a little bit of a turquoisey color, and then some navy blue. On this first page, I'm just going from essentially like a light to a medium blue shade. So I'm using white at the top, some of that light blue, and then coming in with a little bit of that turquoise. We are going to make 2 pages. The second one will be from the turquoise to that darker navy bluish color. So I didn't come in with my darkest color yet. I'm going from light to dark here. I think this will really create some fun dimension and really interest in my project here. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I'm actually not a big fan of birds, but I felt like when I tried looking up cottagecore stuff, there was a few different bird imagery type of things, and so my original idea was like creating this hanging piece where they are staggered and you can see how the birds are flying. And then when I got to that point, which you'll see in a second here, it didn't work, okay? The twine was all wrapped up and the birds weren't facing the same way, and the concept is good. And if we can figure it out, I think it would be cool to be able to hang something like that up. But anyways, we went a different route. Here you can see I'm going from the turquoise to the darker navy-ish blue color, and I'm just going to keep going over this until it's all, nice and blended. Again, this technique or this look of a lighter color to a darker color or one color to another is called a gradient. Here is the turning point. Here's when I realized this isn't going to work, okay? I am tying up some thicker jute onto my wooden dowel that is now dry, and I do like the way this part looks, okay? This part looks pretty good, but then when we get to the actual trying to hang it, it doesn't look good, okay? In the meantime, I am going to just measure out some sections where I'm going to put my birds. Now, I measured this out so that there were 4 sections on each page, so I split them in half using my ruler and marked my little placement marks, and I separated each of those pages, like I said, into 4 sections long, 8 sections total on each one, because I thought I would need a front and the back for my little hanging, not necessarily mobile because it wasn't supposed to move, it was just supposed to hang, whatever. That's what I'm doing here. I still use the same sections, and I really love these little pieces and might make a collage with all my extras, but anyways, measured it out, evenly spaced everything out, 8 sections total on each page. Now I'm moving on to actually drawing my birds. Now I am drawing them in the order of smallest to largest and lightest to darkest, because when you think of something and you're looking at it from really far away, usually the things that are further in the back are a bit lighter and they kind of blend in. So that was my thought process here. And I'm looking at pictures of silhouettes of birds flying on my laptop in the progression of that. So I'm really just looking at my laptop, seeing the shapes of the birds, and then making each one in each section slightly larger. I am only making 4 birds per page because I will fold them in order to cut both sides, which I don't end up needing. Whatever. Anyways, I'm drawing out my birds here one by one. So once I've got those all traced out, I ripped my pages out of my notebook here, and I'm cutting the rows. So I'm cutting them row by row, and then using that guided line that's in the middle of each row, I'm going to fold the pieces in half and cut out the bird within. Now again, this was to support my initial project of having them hang down the strings on our wooden dowel rod, and then I realized that's just not going to work. That's the purpose of having it folded in half and doing it this way, so that there would be paint on both sides and so that it would match up. I do recommend using some detailed scissors for this portion. It was a bit difficult. These scissors are a bit older, and it was hard to get into some of the crevices, so if you have smaller ones, probably will work out better for you. Now here they are all displayed. Look how cool that looks. I love seeing the progress of that. And that's what kind of sparked what ended up actually happening with this project. Here what you see is me gluing some twine in between both sides of the little birds. We aren't going to end up needing to do that because I take it apart later anyways. Here I'm just showing you, okay, like do you kind of get the point? Yeah, it looks terrible. Maybe with like fishing wire or something so it would be clear. It was a cool idea in my head, okay? It just didn't really looked awful. So scratch that. We are actually just going to make a gorgeous piece of wall art with it. As I said, if anyone has suggestions of how that could work, if you kind of get what I was trying to do, let me know down below. Now I am going one by one and gluing them onto a larger piece of paper because I loved that when I had them just displayed side by side the way it looked. So now I have them ascending up on a, I believe 9x12 piece of mixed media paper, so it's a little bit thicker than just regular paper. I'm using Elmer's Craft Bond glue, which is a little bit thicker than just the regular Elmer's. It is great for things like this. If I can find one online, I will link it down below for you because I often find that they're out of stock. So again, I'm just gluing them one by one. I'm using a toothpick because my tip of my crafting glue was clogged. And I'm staggering these, kind of looking at the picture that I had originally looked at them at, so they weren't all super linear. Like, as you can see, it's kind of staggered. So that's the process I'm using here all the way up to the upper right hand corner. Now I think this would also look gorgeous on like a plain white canvas, and it would also be easy to hang. The route I went was I was kind of thinking of having like a matte black frame on it, but I didn't have a piece of paper or cardstock or whatever on hand that was large enough to cover the entire background. So once I had this completely glued and I set it aside, what I decided to do was use a 12 by 12 inch piece of black textured cardstock, fold it in half, cut it in half, and then I kind of created this offset asymmetrical frame, which I think gives it a modern twist. Now, I think this could have been more CottageCore if it had the full background frame and not as much of this kind of asymmetrical look. And I also think I could have put maybe a contrasting color of cardstock in the corners that are empty, so like a turquoise or something. I might still do that, we'll see. But anyways, I'm just trying to frame it here, making sure it all looks even, tracing the edges so I know where they go, and then I'm just going to glue it all down. Easy as that. Just so you know, in order for this to really dry, I did stack a couple books on it so it would get nice and flat and the edges wouldn't curl up from the glue. So that's an extra tip that you could use there. Let me know how you would frame this if you were to make this in your house, and answer the magical question, of course, of whether it's CottageCore or not. Like I said, I think if the frame were different, it could be. I'm not sure. I think the black frame kind of gives it a modern edge to it, and I think, like I said, I could have put like a turquoise block of color in the opposite corners. But overall, I really like it, and I love the gradient of colors. Is it Cottage Core round 4? Let's move on to our stunning flower crown DIY. Here I am wearing it outside. I first want to highlight how beautiful Solo Wood Flowers products are. This is the box I received from them. I got one large plain assortment of flowers, which means they are just like whites, beiges, bark colors. These are wood flowers, and they are so soft and so beautiful. They almost feel like foam. You would never guess that it's wood, but they are stunning. I also ordered a pack that had a variety of colors, and I will have a link for their products down below that you can use if you want to shop all of their incredible products. They have sales all the time too, which is awesome, and they sell dyes. So if you buy those plain flowers, you can dye them yourself. Thank you, Solo Wood, for sending me these wonderful products for me to feature in today's flower crown video. Today's DIY is so simple and affordable. I am starting out with this wired greenery that I got from Dollar Tree. You could also just do this yourself by using some like thick some of that like thick wired jute twine, or you could even try doing this with a headband instead of a crown shape. But I'm going in with this stuff because it already had the wire inside of it, which makes it bendable and moldable to my head, as well as the leaves around it. And here are all my crazy faces as I'm trying to cut this wire, which was a little more difficult than I expected. But basically I just used it, wrapped it around my head to the size I needed, and then cut it to that size so that I would be able to create my base for my flower crown. I'm taking the ends of that and just twisting them around each other as best as can be, and then I'm going to secure it with some hot glue, which is what you can see here. It is super important to make sure that when you're measuring your flower crown around your head that it's not too tight, because once you start adding products and stuff to it, you're adding your flowers. I'm going to use felt in a minute. It might be even tighter then. So I have mine just sitting comfortably, and that's the way that I cut it and measured it. Now I'm pulling out all the flowers that I want to use for this project. You could use any flowers you want. I'm using, of course, the Solo Wood flowers, and I went for a more natural look for this particular DIY. But you could, of course, use as many colors as you want. I am then starting to arrange where I would like these flowers, what I want as my centerpiece, and so I decided that the centerpiece or focal point should be this kind of white puffy flower. Guys, sorry, I don't actually know flower names, so I'm just going to describe them the best I can. I'm using some cut strips of green felt that I have to secure them to the back. So I first take a flower, I glue it to the wire, and then I use some green felt to extra secure it. I burned myself so many times during this. Please use some sort of something to protect your fingers because ouch, it really hurt. When you're figuring out your arrangement, I suggest having more than enough flowers in front of you just so you can kind of play with it. Luckily, I ended up using most of the ones that I had pulled out, and I will definitely be using these again in the future. This is my first flower crown, actually, so I'm really excited about how it turned out, but I'm basically making it pretty symmetrical. I started from my focal point in the middle, and then I'm just matching up each flower as they go to around the sides. Using that same technique of hot gluing it down, I hold it for about 10 seconds with just the flower, the hot glue, and that wire or base. And then I'm going in with my strip of felt and hot gluing that on and holding that as well for about 10 seconds. If I last, like I said, I burnt myself quite a few times. These flowers you see here had like a lot of, I don't know, puffy or extra petals in the back, so I did give them a little bit of a haircut, a little trim, to make sure that they would fit a little bit nicer. You can vary your pattern so it's not all the same flowers. You can use more than just the few that I used. This is totally customizable to your liking. I am just realizing as I go here that my leaves that were on that kind of base were a little bit all over the place. I thought it would look cool and a little bit, I don't know, just more eclectic that way, but it ended up being a little bit wonky. So the cool thing is I just snipped off some leaves and then positioned them to where I wanted them to be so that I knew they would look good and not so kind of crazy. So that's what I'm working on here, is readjusting where I have my leaves to where I think they should be and where they would look good. Once I'm done with that, it is not totally time to finish yet. We have to try it on and see how it looks. So here I am just testing it, and Yeah, really weird leaves everywhere, like I just said. So back to the drawing board with the leaves, and I start cutting away again and repositioning them. I ended up adding 2 extra leaves to the end of each side of my flower crown, and then I had 1 extra leaf at the very end that I just ended up saving for another DIY, because it wouldn't make sense that if I'm making a symmetrical, as in symmetrical, not as in asymmetrical. Anyways, a symmetrical crown, that I wouldn't have 1 extra leaf on the other side. So I just saved that one for later, and I'm just wrapping these up. Now, I didn't end up having to secure the leaves with felt because they just glued really nicely to each other, and it worked out just fine. I ended up really liking that at the back. As you can see, there is that little bit of a gap where there aren't any leaves or flowers, but I think it makes sense, so that there's, a front and a back. It makes it more apparent. It makes it a little bit more structured looking. Now I'm just fine tuning my piece here by snipping off any extra little pieces of stem that are sticking out, by extra securing some of my areas with some extra hot glue, and making sure all my felt is secure so that when I put my crown on, it is not going to all completely fall apart, which would be devastating. Then I try it on one last time, and let's move on to the reveal.